Shia-Sunni tensions are likely to get worse. For those of you who don't know, Daesh or ISIS are Sunni controlled, and they have a significant bone of contention with Shias, who are heavily represented in the Iraqi government. So, as you can see, essentially everyone who's currently left in the province is a Sunni. And as the Shias return under government control, those tensions will increase drastically. So as the deployment goes on, we're likely to see more and more sectarian tension throughout the district. And finally, the enemy is extremely fond of IEDs and VBIEDs, which are vehicle-borne IEDs. It's a common Daesh tactic to seed entire towns with large numbers of IEDs in order to deny them to opposing forces. Alright, moving on to slide 4, it's a quick overview of the province as a whole. A few points I'll point out is Fort Juliet over to the far west. That's where our initial field hospital and our air base will be.
User joined your channel.
That's where our air elements will be operating out of out of a field air base. Ground elements will be operating out of TAA Kilo, which is at the end of Route Banjo, which is the primary Baghdad highway. Throughout the AO, it's predominantly flat. Actually, if we bounce on to slide 5, I'll just give you the full AO breakdown there. So, slide 5 then. The AO is split into 4 zones marked on the map. The blue represents rivers, the black is Route Banjo, the main highway. That there are 2 canals and 1 river called Objective Bar, Objective Homer, and Objective River. They're marked on the map as well. This splits the AO into 4 parts, where there are 6 crossing points suitable for vehicles and 11 further crossing points suitable for dismounted infantry. The key takeaway from this is certainly our vehicle movement laterally through the AO is extremely limited, and the key takeaway for the EOD guys is those vulnerable points will have to be swept on a near constant basis, because even one of those going down will severely restrict our maneuverability. A point on the crossing points for infantry. Certainly with the canals, you can climb over the wall of the canal, but you're obviously slow and at risk while you do that. To the northwest of the AO, then you've got Route Banjo, which is the main Bakwaba and Baghdad highway. That'll be part of our initial phases, will be to reopen that highway. Straddling that highway then are the towns of Khan Bani Sad and Riyadh. Those are the only 2 towns in the AO that are still heavily populated by civilians. Almost every other town in the AO is either completely empty or the town only has 1, 2, tops 3 families still living inside. And then in the centre, you can see on the drawing just east of Objective Police is the Khan Bani Sad Airport, which is the main air hub for this entire province. The AO as a whole is essentially completely flat, although in the southeast, this higher ground is approximately 200 metres higher than the rest of the AO. Moving on then to slide 6, a bit on the human terrain. As I've said, the remaining population is predominantly Sunni and centred in the 2 towns of Khan Bani Sad and Riyadh. The Shia population has been pretty much entirely displaced, but is expected to return as we liberate their towns, which are focused in the east of the AO. The bulk of the government positions are held by Shias, and as a result of this, the potential for abuse of power and position is extremely high. As the government retains or regains control, it's likely they'll take out the fact that they've been displaced from the area on what's left of the Shia population. A key point for that, if you look at the picture in the bottom right hand side, is both sides maintain militias. So if the sectarian tensions get any worse than they already are, you're likely to see clashes between the militias. Moving on then to OPFOR. OPFOR capabilities. Corneliuson, shoot a question.
Yes, concerning those militias, if they do clash, what are we to do against them clashing? Are we just going to stand by and watch, or are we going to attempt to break them up?
Those orders will come from company, but as far as higher command is concerned, as long as they're not shooting at blue forces, then what they do to each other is primarily of their concern.
Okay, Roger.
Alright, any further questions on that? Cool. Alright, Op 4 then. Capabilities of Op 4. I'm going to just go through a quick coward analysis of Op 4. This will all be expanded on. We'll be bringing back the recognition guides that we had during Chieftain, so specific bits of equipment will appear in recognition guides. This is just a general overview of what they have. So there's two primary forces we'll be fighting. The semi-regular force of trained and experienced fighters backed up by volunteers and conscripts from other nations. They have a medium, light and heavy armor capability, primarily captured tanks from the Iraqi army, anything up to and including M1 Abrams, and lighter armor, things like Humvees and a small number of MRAPs. There's a significant anti-air threat for you JHC boys, primarily Iglas and manpads with ZU-23, both static and mounted on vehicles. There's also a small number of Shilka radar-guided self-propelled anti-aircraft guns in the AO. A significant IDF threat. There's large numbers of artillery pieces in the hands of the enemy forces, anything up to 155mm, although their ammunition supply is intermittent, so don't expect to see them constantly. And as I've already stated, there's a significant mine and IED threat. The second bow, or the second string to their bow, is an irregular force of stay-behind troops. Essentially, these are trained to blend into the civilian population. As we move through towns, and they'll stay behind and attempt to disrupt our logistics. So they will be primarily an IED threat, things like intimidation, and you should see some small arms fire, although again we assess that will be primarily against the local population or green forces. Moving on then to the organisation. The governorship of Diyala is what Daesh referred to this AO as. The governor of the area is Azir Jafari. He's a former commander under the Ba'ath government and has been charged with multiple war crimes, as you can imagine. His 2IC then is Faris Shahid. Again, he didn't work for the Ba'ath government, but he grew up in Ba'athist Iraq and fought during the Iraq War, during the insurgency in the Iraq War. His quartermaster, Bakir al-Shabazz, he's a Baghdad native. He's one of the few Shias inside the command structure. And he is their primary quartermaster, so he deals with all their supplies. A lot of which will come up the Baghdad highway once it's been reopened by friendly forces. Their primary IED maker, Halit Bariam, is an ethnic Turk. His father migrated to fight for ISIL, AQI, a predecessor group of ISIS, and he was killed by a US airstrike, so he is primarily personal motivation. That means that as soon as he sees blue forces, he's going to prioritise striking us over striking green forces. Their main recruiter / conscriptor is Ghalib al-Tahir. Again, he's an invasion of Iraq veteran from Baghdad. He's supposed to be quite charismatic and pretty good at talking people into doing what he wants them to do. The tax collector is Osama Matar. He's another Sunni Muslim. He's local to the area. He worked for Saddam Hussein's finance branch. Apparently a pretty cold guy. He just wants his money and then he'll go away. Their executioner / local justice is Rajab Farouk, another Sunni Muslim. Again, has particular hatred for blue forces and particular hatred for the British in general, as he grew up in the Basra region. This guy is one of our primary targets throughout. He's the guy who organises all of the essentially atrocities against the local nationals. Does anyone have any? Obviously, everyone here has a staff working under them, and as we chip away at those staffs, and take out those people, enemy capabilities will be severely reduced.
Sorry, I had a question for the thing, but my
Sure.
TeamSpeak got out there. Are we to kill or capture these aces?
As intelligence, as we receive intelligence on these people throughout the deployment, it'll be company discretion, company command's discretion. What we do, we'll either attempt to kill or capture them ourselves, or hand it over to the Iraqi Special Forces for them to try and deal with it.
Roger.
Alright, moving on to slide 9, Op4 weapons and equipment. Essentially, the enemy forces use whatever they can get their hands on, either bought from the black market or captured from their various enemies. It'll include Soviet-era small arms, obsolete NATO small arms, and current NATO small arms, mostly captured from the Iraqi army. Anything up to and including crew-served weapons and heavy vehicles. They're particularly fond, as I said, of IEDs, VB-IEDs, especially in things like Humvees, and you'll also see them in actual armoured vehicles like tanks, BMPs and things like that. Again, as I said earlier, there's a medium threat for armour and heavy armour. So things like BMPs, as you can see the picture on the right hand side, and MBTs, so T-55, T-72, and a small number of M1 Abrams, again captured from the Iraqi army. One point to note, if you look at the two pictures here, the bottom left are the uniformed troops. Essentially, again, they wear any uniforms they can get their hands on, but it will be some form of uniform. On the bottom right, you see the irregular troops who tend to wear just all black. But will also just wear civilian attire as well. Yeah, I'll try getting a new battery from my smoke detector. Alright, moving on to slide 10, the asymmetric threat. As I stated, this is an irregular stay-behind force that'll attempt to disrupt coalition forces' efforts at stabilization and humanitarian aid. The key to combating this will be regular route clearance and presence patrols, particularly in the city to Camp Bani Sad, which, as I said, is sunny and likely to support, or at least passively support, Daesh forces. Any operations, or they will likely direct their operations at Civ-Pop in order to increase Sunni Shia tensions and disrupt any sort of reassertion of government power. Things like intimidation and bribery of corrupt officials will allow them to maintain a covert presence. So I expect them to be a consistent issue throughout the deployment. Alright, moving on to slide 11, Op4 reinforcements. Most of their low-level fighters will come from the local area, either recruited or conscripted or forced to fight, essentially. The presence of Western troops in the Diyala area will increase the prestige of the province commanders, attracting more skilled fighters to the area. So initially, a lot of the guys who will be fighting might not be the cream of the crop, but as they see there's a chance to have a crack at Western troops, more prestigious fighters will likely come to engage us and bring an interesting what's the menu, shall we say, of skills. To the north and west will be the primary supply routes for both reinforcements and supplies, and covert resupplies from Baghdad. Yeah, absolutely. As I said, they will use anything they can get their hands on. If they can get their hands on first-rate British equipment, then they'll definitely use it. Although supplying and maintaining SA-80s is a nightmare even for us, but certainly vehicles and anything big that goes bang. Especially, I'll actually mention here, especially if they're to capture one of our vehicles, expected to be used as a VBIED, because it's quite a common tactic for them to capture Iraqi army vehicles and then within days use those vehicles as VBIEDs against Iraqi army positions. Does that answer your question?
Yep, all good.
Microphone muted.
Cool. Murdoch, shoot.
If a vehicle is captured and we can identify the vehicle is captured, would you want it destroyed or would you want to try and capture it back?
Again, that's a company HQ decision, but what I would recommend is that every section carries a satchel charge in their vehicle that they can use to deny the vehicle. That they can use to deny the vehicle if it looks like that vehicle is going to be captured by enemy forces, or could potentially be captured.
Roger.
Alright, moving on to slide 12, which is Upward Doctrine. Essentially, the enemy will seek to seize the initiative by tying coalition forces down in ground protection operations. This is a common tactic they use, especially while fighting the Iraqi army. They would threaten population centres with things like suicide bombers or direct attacks. As the Iraqis will commit more and more troops to defending, say, a particular town, that would give the enemy forces freedom of manoeuvre in the countryside, where they could use high-speed technical convoys, essentially, to surround and then eventually destroy the detachments in those towns. Again, as we said earlier on, significant numbers of IEDs will be used to deny key areas. The enemy are fanatics. More than willing to die, but they won't throw their lives away for no return. They are smart enough to know the whole adage of he who fights and runs away will live to fight another day. A lot of these guys have been fighting for years, even before ISIS was even a thing. They fought during the Iraq War. And the enemy will likely seek to initiate attacks with some form of IED strike. This will either be offensively with VBIED or defensively with just emplaced IEDs, especially for things like ambushes and anything like that. Right, that concludes the Op 4 section of the brief. Moving on to slide 13, Green Forces. The two key Green Forces members you need to know about are Asil Al-Tor, a Baghdadi local who's been assigned as district governor, currently located in Baghdad. He'll return once the security situation is stabilized. The picture of him is on the bottom right hand corner of the slide. The senior Iraqi army commander for the district is Brigadier General Rafi Hassan. He's currently conducting route clearance operations between Baghdad and Diyala with approximately a regiment-sized force, which is 3 battalions. It's expected that he will arrive at the edge of the Diyala province in time for us to finish MST and deploy, at which point we will take over primary responsibility for the Diyala province from him, and he'll take more of a backseat role. This should be no later than the 1st of July 2017. The bottom picture is one of General Hassan's platoons. As you can see, desert uniforms, M1 Abrams, Humvees, M16s, PKMs. Fairly similar uniforms to what Daesh will be wearing. So make sure you PID, because the last thing we need is a green on blue or blue on green incident. Mikkelsen?
Yeah, it is regarding to green for. You mentioned it yourself, blue and blue or blue and green in this case. How many Abramses do we think or do we know they will bring into the AO?
Green forces have, I think, approximately a company strength, so it'll be between 12 and 20 Abrams. Daesh have at least 2 operating in Diyala province, but we're unsure where they are.
Gotcha.
Or if they're even operational for that matter.
Gotcha.
Alright, so that concludes all the personalities. Does anyone have any questions on any of the personalities? Op 4, Green 4? Oh, cool. Alright, moving on to the actual campaign overview then. So slide 14. The campaign is split into 4 phases, the first of which being opening Route Banjo. The second will be seizing the airfield. The third will be clearing as far as Objective River. And phase 4 will be clearing anything past the river. Phase 5 then will be our coin phase, would be consolidation and stabilization of the entire province with the assistance of the Iraqi army. Phase 1 then, slide 15. We'll be starting at TAE Kilo, which is Tactical Assembly Area Kilo, just on the highway from Baghdad. We'll move up Route Banjo. This is week 1, Saturday night. We'll move up Route Banjo, seizing Objective Rick, stopping at the LOE that I've marked there with a blue line. This is quite a short distance, but we expect significant enemy contact along that road. This highway has been closed for the better part of 2 years, and as soon as Daesh sense there's a significant coalition push to open the road, they'll pour everything they have in. Essentially, the plan is to seize Objective Rick in the surrounding area, and then dig in and wait for enemy forces to come to us and inflict as many casualties as possible. Second part of phase 1 then will be the seizure of Objective Sorcery, which is a police station in the town of Riyadh, and Objective Mordi, which is a industrial compound just to the north of Camp Bani Sad. Once that's done, we'll clear out the town of Kambanisad itself, and thereby opening the highway for traffic further north. Thomas, question.
After phase 1 and the completion of Objective Rick, would it be plausible if Core HQ agrees, depending on the situation, we can use that as a potential, CCP area in the future? So, say if it's too far away for us to get to the park, Juliet, could we use that as some form of a medical area, or is that not possible?
That's a specific planning consideration. I'm just giving you a campaign overview.
Okay.
So we can discuss that once Company HQ actually starts planning for that specific night.
No worries.
Alright, moving on to slide 16 then is phase 2, which is the seizure of the airfield. Here we'll be seizing Objective WAM and Objective Police, which are 2 crossing points across Objective Homer. And then we'll be moving on to seize Objective Ali and Objective Jane, which are the airport itself. One is a military compound within the airport complex, and the other is the civilian terminals. Moving on to slide 17 to be phase 3, which would be pushing out from the airfield as far as Objective River, pushing as far as Objective Slayer, which is a bridge across, and Objective Aerosmith, and then pushing straight east from Objective Clash, which is another crossing point, through Al Badera and all the way up to the Oxtail there. This is heavy green zone, which is why we have FEWAF on the training plan for MSD. This will be quite close in, up close, probably fairly brutal fighting, depending on how heavily the enemy contests it. It'll be sometime during phase 3 that JHC will begin to operate out of the airport. Again, Torch, that's a Company HQ decision, whether they want prisoners or not. Right, moving on to slide 18 and phase 4 of the operation. So that's everything east of Objective River, which is Objective Voodoo, which is a government building, Objective Cannon, which is an old fob, and then to the north, past Objective Slayers, Objective Jerry, which is another industrial compound. This area is a lot quicker, be a lot easier to move open because this is just all open ground, all open desert, although the high ground where Objective Voodoo and Objective Cannon are located should give enemy ATGMs a good line of sight. It's also on this side of the river where the bulk of the Shia towns are located, so expect after phase 4 is complete to see a large number of civilians return into this area. Moving on to slide 19 then is phase 5, which is our coin phase. Essentially our goals during this phase will be to establish protected operating locations, or PBs, secure key infrastructure. For us particularly it's the crossing points. You'll notice on the map there all of them have been marked VG, which is vital ground that we cannot complete our mission without holding. We'll be facilitating stability ops throughout the AO, both ourselves and supporting the Iraqi army. Maintaining security at all vital ground locations, again the crossing points, keeping Banjo open, and be prepared to conduct offensive operations based on intelligence gathering, i.e. be prepared to kick indoors if you need to. Alright, slide 20, questions. That concludes the brief. Are there any questions? Alright, Squire, shoot.
Just so I kind of know where to draw the line between, I guess, how things are and now alternative history where we're in. Diyala is predominantly a Shia province, so am I to understand that either A, they've been pretty much the majority of the population been driven out, or B, this is kind of an alternate history thing for deployment's sake where the province is now more Sunni than Shia?
It's only the 2 kind of major towns I've marked in phase or slide 5. We will take artistic license. Zeus especially will take artistic license in what? Zeus will take artistic license in kind of which towns are what, but for the most part the towns are Shia, which is why most of the towns are abandoned.
So to follow that up then, just again understanding backstory and where we are now in this campaign, organizations like the Body Brigade, Mighty Army, that this is kind of their heartland. In addition to years ago, they took control of the governorship for the province and various other things. So what is their status? I know you mentioned militias and stuff, which I guess they would fall under, but what happened to them? How were they defeated? Things of that nature.
For the purposes of the deployment, we've moved Yala slightly so it's flush with ISIS held territory.
Okay. So it's not real life Diala.
Yeah, so it's not real. It's similar. So it's right on the border of kind of the Sunni triangle. So that's why only one half of it is Sunni. As for militias and stuff, in order to dumb it down, we've the things like the Mahdi army and stuff will just be straight Shia militia, Sunni militia, because unfortunately, as an Armaism, there's only so many sides that we can replicate, i.e. 3, blue 4, op 4, and green 4.
It's
been dumbed down slightly.
Real Diala, then the Peshmerga doesn't come into play either. All right, that wraps it up.
No, yeah. Echo, next question.
How long are we expecting each phase to last?
So each phase will be about 2 to 3 weeks, with a total deployment time of around 12 weeks. The next deployment is already in the plans and already in the works, so if it comes to the fact that we get our asses kicked in this one, we can fail this deployment, or conversely, if everyone is having a good time and everyone's having fun, we can extend it slightly as well. But it's planned for, say, about 12 weeks. Assuming everything goes well. You happy enough with that?
We'll just have to see.
Torch, did your question get answered? I'm gonna assume yes, because you're still muted. No. Is it your first question or your second question? Okay, I'll answer your second question when I get to it. Warlito, was your question answered?
Yep.
Ferran, again, I think I answered your question. Williams, for the purposes of this, Burma Company are operating further north. But if it comes to, for some reason, we open Burma between now and then, we can work them into the deployment if we really need to. Shoot. ISIS wearing Iraqi uniforms is fairly unlikely because they don't want to get engaged by their own guys unless they're wearing them as a specific false flag op. Similarly, most of the equipment they've captured have been painted in their own colours. I think it's slide 10 where you can see in the background where they've just painted the Humvee black. So unless it's stuff being specifically used in order to discredit the Iraqi army, expect anything they're using to be painted a different colour, just so they don't get killed by their own guys. Bearing in mind, a lot of these guys are untrained. Essentially, guys have just been handed an AK and told to go shoot at the infidel.
Yeah, and rules of engagement?
Rules of engagement, again, will be confirmed by Company HQ, but for anything suspected Iraqi army, I would say your Card Alpha, and anything confirmed Daesh, your Card Bravo.
Right.
Karanlik. Yeah, what we've gone for in one platoon is every section will carry an N-Law, a HP I-Law, and a HEDP I-Law, which will give you 2 anti-armor and 1 anti-structure. But again, that'll go down likely through your platoon HQ. Torch, no militia. Yeah, so the Shia militias will definitely fight ISIS. It's possible the Sunni militias. Bear in mind, a lot of the Sunnis merely tolerate ISIS's presence. So if they could liberate their own towns, they likely will. A lot of the certainly a lot of the civilian population don't agree with the way ISIS run things. Does that answer your question? Essentially, expect everyone to be shooting at everyone else. No, under no circumstances are we to assist in sectarian violence. Mickelson, question?
How friendly is Civ Pop towards Blue 4?
Expect Shia populations to be pro Blue 4. Expect Sunni populations to range from anti Blue 4 to indifferent.
Right, Roger.
Thomas?
Have there been any likely cases of green on green situations or green on blue situations?
Green on green, again, due to the inexperience of the Iraqi army and the ISIS penchant for using equipment that doesn't necessarily belong to them, you're talking more nervous, inexperienced Iraqi troops have engaged things that they shouldn't necessarily engage. But as for premeditated, I want to kill some white people kind of green on blue, that's very rare.
So, additional to add to that, are we going to be doing cooperative patrols with them? I.e., 4IB working alongside with the Iraqi army, training and development side of things, or is that purely us going in and doing our side of things, and there's other units already developing those guys and stuff like that?
To drop RP for a moment, I would love to do joint patrols, but in Arma,
limitations. Yeah.
There are Arma limitations, so if we can think of a way to do it, yes, absolutely, but we may be limited by the fact that this is Arma.
No worries.
But certainly as the campaign moves on, expect to see Iraqi army around. Gutshall, yeah, so essentially everyone's shooting at everyone else. Even people who are nominally on the same side are shooting at each other. Echo, question?
Wait, is my mic on?
Yes.
Okay, I couldn't tell. I couldn't find it through the big list of people. How often are the platoons going to be working together? Is there going to be points where we're going to be encountering each other, or are we just going to be mostly separate?
Again, to drop RP for a moment, one of the fall downs of Chieftain was we had limited kind of experience working as a company. This is planned so that if possible and if we can get away with it, we'll do company level ops, but if that doesn't work, every single operation is built so that we can work as two separate platoons if we need to. So in a perfect world, we'll be doing company ops at least 50% of the time. In a non-perfect world, it'll be just two platoons working together. Does that answer your question? I'm gonna go with a yes since you stopped talking.
I said yes. It did not pick up.
Alright, sorry, cool.
Yeah.
Papa, you're just chatting shit. Hurst. Yeah, so what we'll be bringing in, and Weston can probably expand on this, is limited respawn tickets. What we're looking at now is either one death for everyone or kind of two deaths for everyone. So it can, as I mentioned earlier, we can, and not necessarily will, but we can absolutely fail this deployment. Sorry, I have the hiccups. We can fail this deployment, and the tickets will represent that. So over the course of the deployment, we'll keep track of how many casualties we're losing, and if it starts to reach absurd numbers, then we may just have to call it quits. But each night, you'll probably have one or two tickets per man. So that'll represent your reserve platoon or your reserve company for a battalion kind of level operation. So does that answer your question, Hurst? Torch, air support. Yeah, so we will have Murdoch's already been warned off, but we'll have 3 Apaches for the deployment. So hopefully they don't get shot down more than 3 times. As for the other air support, yeah, the FARP will be active from the start. Air will be operating now on the FARP. The Kazovac chain will likely be any casualties will be Kazavac'd back down to TA Kilo, where they'll be picked up from by air, moved back to the aid station at the FARP, and then reinserted. At least initially. Once we have the airport, that'll become the aid station. So it'll be wherever the sections are, they'll be deployed and pulled back. A ingrown toenail, cool. And Papa, I am happy for that, but that's an out of game G5 decision. Murdoch, yeah, you're gonna die. Gutshall. As of now, no. But again, if it becomes a case of they're getting shot down constantly, then we may need to limit it. But it's more to prevent the Apache from just being used as a throwaway asset that's been brought in. Yeah, Weston's just expanded on the respawns. Jenkin, initially, no, but when we move into the coin phase, and again, depending on Zeus availability, yes. Torch, so our orders for phase 1, the orders will be 2 York's battle group will seize key infrastructure in Diyala province in order to allow a reassertion of government of Iraq authority in the region. So don't go blowing up stuff the civilians need, but if it's a case of that Daesh are dug into a building and the only way to get them out of it is to drop it on them, then yeah, do what you have to do. Again, no wanton, as normal, no wanton destruction, but if you need to do what you need to do. Oh, Murdoch, shoot.
Rules of engagement for myself, I've got a whole crap ton of different types of rockets that I can fire. So should I come speak to you at the end about the different effects that they can have?
Yeah, again, that's a JTAC. That's a JTAC / company HQ decision on what they want to use and what they don't want to use, but I'll likely be involved in that. We can discuss it later.
Rod.
Thomas?
So is it okay to assume that the ROE for phase 1 is more likely alpha, in the sense that we won't be shooting anything unless we're fired upon?
For phase 1 through 4, we'll essentially be on warfighting rules unless we're doing kind of behind the line patrols.
Right.
But any behind the line patrols, or once we move into phase 5, it'll be as normal coin rules, only fire when fired upon.
So basically until phase 5, it's more of a case of I see the enemy, I shoot.
Yeah, as I said, the ISIS guys will be wearing black, so they should be fairly easy to spot, although make sure you PID targets, because as we saw in some of the pictures, sometimes they wear similar enough stuff to what the Iraqi army are wearing, and we don't want to start beef with the Iraqi army because they have a lot more people than we do.
Yeah, and that's another question actually. I know this was commented earlier, but I believe I missed it, so I apologize. What is the case of our ROE in the sense of treatment of casualties against, OPFOR? So if you have any POWs and stuff like that, are we to treat them, or are we to, for intelligence purposes, or are we just leave it as it is? Kind of thing?
Well, I'm not going to tell you to commit war crimes.
Okay.
So shooting prisoners is a war crime.
Yeah, I know that. Hence why I'm asking.
Yeah. So let's just leave it at that, shall we? Western more expansion, cool. Papa, do not chase Abrams. Just don't do anything like you wouldn't normally do. Are you happy with that? I just have this image in my head of an Abrams driving along and Papa chasing after it, banging on one of the hatches.